So the most recent episode in the Timeline Cape Ann series was about Lexington Avenue and Magnolia, and the story really revolved around the famous Oceanside Hotel, which was massive. It was the largest wooden structure east of the Mississippi, the largest hotel in the Northeast at that time. This would be the turn of the 20th century, when Magnolia was a resort town. So it's hard to imagine what Lexington Avenue was really like 100 years ago, but it was essentially like Saks Fifth Avenue. We did that piece and did a nice deep dive into the history there. And then, of course, what happens in 1958 is the building burns down and sort of Magnolia's identity goes up in smoke with it. So the building burns in 1958. So I was doing a lot of work with Magnolia Historical Museum, which is an old little red schoolhouse in Magnolia. And that's where I got all these images from. And when I was there, I noticed that there was this safe sitting in the room, Hodgson, Kennard and Company. And this was a jewelry store in the Oceanside Hotel. And in 1934, just after July 4th, it gets robbed. 5 gunmen show up, rob the place, and steal more than $300,000 worth of jewels, which is more than $6 million in today's standards. And I believe, I'm looking into this, but it may have been the biggest jewelry heist up until the Brinks robbery in Boston in 1950 or so. So it's a big deal. And so I ask about the safe, and it turns out that a neighbor of mine, because I grew up in Magnolia, her dad was a teenager working in this jewelry store, polishing silver when the gunman showed up. So in fact, the manager of the store used to tease the kids and do one of those things where he would tap one shoulder behind their back and you would turn around and he'd be the other way. And so that was happening to the kid while he's polishing silver. He feels a tap on the back, so he doesn't turn around, feels a tap again, doesn't turn around. Then a third time he turns around thinking it's his manager, and it's a machine gun pointed at him. So there are 5 employees in the store. They get bound and gagged. They see the heist take place. There are 5 robbers in there smashing the cases, taking the jewelry. They flee in 2 like old Ford V8 sedans. They go through Manchester, then Essex, and then I think eventually in Lynn. The police never solved the case. But what's crazy too is at the time this happens in July 34, Bonnie and Clyde were killed about 6 weeks before this happened. And then John Dillinger is killed about 2 weeks after this happened. So there's this robbery hysteria going on. So when this robbery happens at Hodgson Kennard, immediately Magnolians are starting to think, was this Dillinger's gang that did this? But anyway, it doesn't get solved. So I'm working on this story. Now what's crazy is the kid that's part of this robbery, the employee there, his daughter is still alive in Magnolia. And so we're going to interview her and talk about this. And hopefully she has some pictures to send along with us. Everyone who was an employee there, they were fine after this happened. Her dad then goes on to, he ends up owning his own garage, Davis Garage. His name was Eddie Davis. So we're gonna try to find some old pictures of him, get his daughter's account of what Eddie told her. Her name's Holly Davis. So the one thing that Holly remembers her dad saying is one of the robbers was dressed up like an old-timey golfer, an all Argyle with the cap and the high socks, and they're all dressed up like enjoying summer sports when they came in. Another weird story is just before this happened, the day before, a massive shipment of jewels comes in. So immediately the police think it might be some sort of inside job, but it turns out the place was cased beforehand. Someone posing as a typewriter salesman went in about a week before, and the owner or the manager had a little terrier dog named Heine. And Heine would go nuts anytime a salesman would show up inside the shop. It was okay with customers, but anytime a salesman showed up, the dog would go nuts. While the robbery is taking place inside, the dog is outside the shop barking its brains out, to the point where one of the robbers gets an itchy trigger finger and threatens to start shooting the employees. So one of the robbers leaves the shop, brings the dog in, and the dog immediately goes up to one of the robbers and starts barking as if it recognizes it as a salesman. So there's a bunch of these cool little facets about the story. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. So anyway, that is the latest timeline we're working on, is the amazing jewelry heist of the Hodgson, Kennard and Company jewelry store on Lexington Avenue.